Hey everybody, and thanks for watching Woodcrest Bonsai. In my last video, I root pruned and repotted and removed a lot of the long leggy growth from 4 different Premna that, I have to admit were being neglected. And I was going to do 4 more that are the same age, in the same state. Decent trees that just need some work and some root pruning. But I decided to change my tack a little bit, and I'm going to feature these 2. Now these are still Premnas, but these guys have some problems that I'm not going to fix just by root pruning and cutting back. And they both basically have the same problem. Not that I'm not going to root prune them, and I am going to root prune them, and I am going to cut them back, but they both have the same situation. So let's get this guy out of the way, and we'll talk about the small one first. See if we can't zoom in. Okay, so it's obviously got, why did I move it? It's obviously got a lot of excess growth. So I'm going to cut some of that back. But it's also got something that it's never going to, quote unquote, recover from in a bonsai pot, no matter how long I wait. And I suppose there is a period of time when it will change, but it's going to be far too long. And that is that this part here is way too straight. It's way too stovepipe. And stovepipe is defined as a trunk that's got no taper at all. So the thickness here is exactly the same as the thickness here. And if you looked at the 4 that I did yesterday, they all had some taper. They all had some movement. Even though it might not have been distinct, but this one is just never going to get that kind of taper in a bonsai pot like this. It also has the scar that we can see right there. And that scar is never going to heal over either. So my plan for this guy is to take it out of the bonsai pot and give it a much bigger pot. And I say pot because I say that in quotes, because I'm actually going to use an old food tray. And this works for me, and I'm not recommending that you try this, although you can. But we have our little food package, and it has whatever, cookies, croissants, whatever it was. And so the procedure is to cut the top away from the bottom. And if you notice, if we look, the top is a little bit deeper. The bottom is a little bit deeper than the top. But these are great because if you've got a shallow bonsai pot, which most bonsai pots are pretty shallow, then your root pruning to get it into a nice shallow pot is minimal if you grow them in something like this. Now these guys, because they have typically some kind of bread, have no ventilation. There are some other food trays that actually have slats already as part of the design, and those are typically what you buy fruit in, strawberry containers for one thing. So I create drainage into something like this with just an awl. And what I like about this is I can decide how much drainage I want. So let's say I could do one in the corner, one in the middle, and then another one in the corner. And then I can do, on the long end, I could do one close to the corner, one in the middle, and one close to the corner. And then another one in the corner, and another one in the middle, and so on and so on. And that would give me a certain amount of drainage. But it wouldn't be all that much drainage. However, I could just as easily put 3 more holes in between this middle one and the one in the corner, or 2, or 1. So I'm actually going to do 1. So if I'm growing a plant that I know needs more moisture, then I can use less drain holes so that the soil drains away less than if it had more drain holes. So in theory, if my awl is making the same exact hole, twice as many holes is going to be twice as much drainage. So that's one of the reasons I like these guys. Okay, so there we go. That's the drainage I'm going to use. And then, like the other 4 in the video I did yesterday, this guy is massively root bound. Well, I don't have my tray, although I think, oh yeah, it's right here. So let's get the tray onto the workbench. And this is interesting because it's missing roots on this side quite a bit. But because it's a Premna, and a lot of this looks just dead, but it isn't. There's almost no dead on this tree. It's mostly alive. And because I'm going to put it into a bigger container and just let it grow on, I'm not really concerned about styling. I'm just not. And I do want, I've got a root here that's kind of coming across the grain, which I'm not sure if I can move that. I'm not confident I can, so I'm just going to remove it. And then, so I'm doing this, I'm using the same technique that I did with yesterday's trees, as if I was going to put it back into the bonsai pot. But I'm not going to put it into the bonsai pot. I'm going to put it into this tray, which will give it far more room for the roots to grow. And then instead of bonsai soil, I'm going to be using my organic soil, my homemade organic soil. And this particular type of plastic is PETE, which stands for polyethylene tetraethylene. And I've used other types of plastic, and this PETE is by far the most UV tolerant, because most plastic, when you put it out in the sun, the UV rays of the sun just degrade the plastic to the point where it will literally just crack apart, get dry and brittle, and then just crack apart. And we're actually going to see that on the other larger tree. It's in a tray that's in a different type of plastic, and it has just totally degraded. So there we go. Now I'm just going to try to get this part here to just grow like crazy. I may still attempt to keep what I'm thinking is going to be the first main branch in line, but allow this part here, the apex, the future apex, to really thicken. This is another problem with this tree being in a bonsai pot. The thickness here and the thickness here is just too disparate. You should have, this branch here should be at least half as thick as this. And in that bonsai pot, it would take years and years and years for that to happen. So this is the next stage. And then, once it roots into here, and I see what I've got, then I'll decide. I may even put it in a bigger pot or even in the ground and let it really take off until this thickness here is more in proportion with the thickness of the main trunk. So that's the first one. Okay, the second one, as you can see, this plastic is all breaking apart. This container was much larger and had a lip, and in fact it has degraded so much that plastic is identified on the bottom of the container with this little triangle, and I can't even read the number or what it is. That's how degraded it is. But you can see the drain holes. Lots and lots of drain holes all the way around. So it worked for a while, but it's definitely not, it's garbage now. It's going in the garbage. So if we look at the tree, and we're going to need to zoom out. For that, it's suffering from exactly the same conditions as the first one. This branch here, and this was a cutting, I believe it or not. This branch here has no taper. It's got a very nice root system, but no taper. We have the big scar. And then this branch here needs to be much, much thicker to be in proportion with this guy. And you can see all the growth it's got. I mean, it's just got crazy old growth, but it's just not happening. And so it's going into a larger pot. And it may also go into the ground. So right now I'm not really concerned about styling. I'm just going to cut everything way back. Including this one here, which I probably should just cut off entirely. And it's kind of the same scenario. This could conceivably be the first main branch. And when this does thicken to be in proportion with this, this could be a really cool small tree, a very masculine tree. So I'm going to cut that to there. I'm going to cut this guy down. And I think I'm going to cut here too. Oh, no, actually I'm going to cut to right. Sort of started it, but I think I can rectify it. Cut to right there and let that guy grow. Where the final branches will be on this thing is definitely yet to be determined. It's got a very nice root system. And now this was in landscape mix. But I'm still going to root prune it. And even though it was in a rectangular container, I'm going to root prune it into a circle. And then put it into a 10-inch bulb pan, also still in the organic landscape soil. I'm not going to put it into bonsai soil. One thing about the shallow containers, you can really get some interesting roots. Although I may bury it more up into here. Okay, that made a much bigger mess than the little one. And there's some surface roots up in here that can go. So cut all this stuff away. And like I said, I'm probably going to bury most of that. And then prune it into a kind of an irregular circle. Remove some of these roots. Take off a little bit of the bottom. Take those two guys off. All right. That looks pretty good. So, I'm going to get rid of this old soil. And roots. Put that in my compost that I use for my garden. And then I have 10-inch bulb pan, which is quite large compared to the tree, but that's really what I want. I probably would put it in more of like an 8-inch bulb pan, but I ran out of 8-inch bulb pans. I don't have any more. So there's our tree, like that. I want it a little lower to bury a lot of these smaller roots. And this will, can we bring it up a little bit? This will certainly delay the amount of time before it's a finished tree, but it was never going to be a finished tree in that other pot. It just wasn't. All right, there we go. And it's pretty much the same scenario as the first one. If this is going to be the first main branch, which is a possibility, This would be a pretty small tree up in here. When it sprouts, begin to style it into a pad for the first main branch. But I'm going to allow this stuff here to just all go crazy, because this part here needs to be at least half as thick as this part here. And it was never going to happen in the pot that it was in. And then once again, once it's rooted out into this pot, I may throw it into the ground, because the ground is the way to really get trunks thick quickly. I don't really need this part any thicker, although it may thicken some. But this part will definitely get in better proportion if I let it all just grow crazy. And I'm talking maybe 3-4 feet. Because it already was growing fairly crazy, but it wasn't doing anything to thicken this trunk. So there you go. And sometimes this kind of procedure is just necessary. I was not happy with the way they were working. They just weren't working for me. So now I've got probably at least another year, maybe more. But paradoxically, both of the trees will be better off for it. So this is kind of like, I don't want to say going backwards, but it's kind of heading in a different direction. So it wasn't working for either of them for the actual look that I wanted. So it's time to do something different. So thanks so much for watching. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. And I will keep you updated on the progress of these two guys and all the trees I do. I try. And leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Premna make fantastic bonsai. But these guys, and I think they both have the potential to be real nice trees. They just need that further development to really be in better proportion. So thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.